O tēnā nau tātou katoa. We've come to you this morning quite hurt and carrying, I guess the proper word for it is a lot of mamai on this matter. For a long time within our history as a hapu of Waitara, we have supported the return of these lands back to the people of Waitara. And we've been through historically very rough last 20 years, 25 plus years of just our participation in the matter. I understand, and I'm addressing you, that this is a bill that's been put through Parliament at the moment and has very little to do with what you're actually talking about or deciding today. But it'd be remiss if I didn't quote one thing from our rangatira rangitake that he said to help you understand how difficult this is. And he told the governor back in 1859, I think it was, that if the lands were to go, then we'd be like the birds on the rock. And when the tide flows in, the birds would have to take flight and there would be nowhere for them to land. And this is how it is for the people of Waitara with the sale of these leases within the settlement, is that there is no whenua except for that marae up the top there of Manu Kōrehi for us to be able to land on. Might just bring you forward to the recent problems up in Auckland with housing. That is the future for this place one day. It's the future for every town in New Zealand, that there'll be homelessness. And the only home that we have within this town now is Manu Kōrehi Pā, and the acreage that is up there. So over the years, it's been really important for us to deal with the notion that these lands are somehow some kind of asset to be played with like that. We would only ever fought for them to be returned to the people so that we could have longevity here, not based on how other people spend money. So I needed to say that so you understand, if you don't already. It's also difficult today when you put into context that we're now in a position of looking at how we might be involved in this matter in a further way. And it's hurtful simply because if we're not involved, then we're being remiss on behalf of the people we represent. And if we are involved, we're simply participating in the cutting up of the booty from the Waitara lands. And we have always said that money that comes from the Waitara lands is blood money. The people who had war made on them in 1860 chose not to take the money for the land, and war was made on them and many people died. That's where the term blood money comes from. So now we're here this morning trying to participate in this process, and on one hand we have an injustice that hasn't been sorted out at a central government level, and we're dealing with the District Council on participation on ultimately the blood money of Waitara. So I didn't think I'd be very productive this morning in light of what we need to achieve today, further participation, but I would not be able to sit at the back and not address you and tell you how serious this is. So we go from that point of view to how we can be involved in what's going on. And I need to tell you that this involvement isn't because there's a lot of money floating around and we want a piece of it. In our heart of hearts, we don't want to touch it. But given that the land is now gone, our future now depends on participating in this. It's a huge change for us. In the second reading of the bill that's going to the Parliament about the settlement of Te Atiawa, will be participating in that and speaking there. That's probably where our concerns are best placed, simply because we will be trying to overturn the settlement that Te Atiawa has come to, which has caused us the loss of our lands. And here we are today, trying to find a way to participate without having this blood on our hands. So it's difficult for us, and just bear with us, please. I stayed up all night last night trying to write a submission for today. Procrastinators, your last work is always in the last hours, but no, not last night. I couldn't put anything constructive together. So Donna, knowing that I would do nothing, I don't know, came up with the things that we need to say. And I just bless you, Donna, because I know that this isn't where we need to be going. This is what we have to do in order to continue our existence within this community, to participate in a different way than we have done over the years. Thank you very much. Donna.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I'm disappointed that one of our Waitara councillors has found fit not to turn up today. I feel that this issue is it is the most important issue that Waitara is facing. And, I'd just like that passed on. Also, to clarify some states where we've gone in and from your forms it says, are you for or are you against? There's no in between, and Waitara has already been bitten by not filling out the proper forms when it comes to your processes. So because of that, therefore we would have been left no choice but to be against the bill and against the New Plymouth District Council from submitting this to the Crown as it stands. Therefore, we ask that the New Plymouth District Council pass that this bill go into writing its second draft with the full participation of the Waitara Hapu, being Otarawa and Manikurihi. Otarawa Hapu supports the sale of the private endowment lease land to the lessees at the time of the inception of the bill into Parliament. That this offer be open to the lessees until the property is sold on from the above date. That the Waitara Hapu, being Otarawa and Manikurihi, have the first right of refusal on these lands if the New Plymouth District Council decides to sell them after the offer to the current lease isn't taken up. That the first right of refusal be available to Waitara Hapu for all leases, commercial and private, forever. That all commercial leases be offered to the Waitara Hapu, being Otarawa and Manikurihi, from the inception of the bill also. That all leases that are leased by an education board be fully remitted. Example is our Orapa kindergarten in Waitara. That all leases leased by superannuants be subsidised by 50%. That all leases leased by a charitable trust for the purpose of children and women be put before the new Waitara board annually for a subsidy of up to 50%. These subsidies that are put in place, we would like them to be put in place to recognise the purpose that the Paramount Chief, Wiramakingi Te Rangitaki, spoke about when he said that these lands were for all widows and orphans and were not to be sold. That the committee be set up to receive all proceeds from the sale of these leases and lease money. The committee be made up of 3 members chosen by the District Council and 4 members from the Waitara Hapu. That the chair of this committee be chosen biannually by the District Council. That all unspent lease money that is held by the District Council be handed to this committee untouched, and that the New Plymouth District Council cannot now or in the future claim against this puti for any such costs occurred in the past or the future without 100% agreement of the committee trustees. That the committee be a standalone committee as its own entity with charitable purposes and status. That the 3 chosen people of the District Council be at least one chosen from the Waitara Community Board, one of our Waitara councillors, and one other person with affinity to Waitara. That all reserved titles be put in the name of the Waitara Hapu with full management and financial responsibility to the District Council until the District Council finds the reserve surplus to their needs. When the reserve becomes surplus, we ask it to be handed back to the Waitara Hapu unencumbered. That the 5 properties that have been offered back to Kotahitanga or Te Atiawa be given back to the Waitara Hapu. being Otarawa Hapu and Manukurahi instead. The Te Atiawa entity have already decided to take the 23 million that was meant to be used to purchase these leases against the wishes of the Waitara Hapu being Otarawa and Manukurahi. The Waitara Hapu, from time the land was stolen by the government, have fought for the return of these lands and have never wanted to take the money over the land. When this was agreed to by the Te Atiawa entity and the Crown to allow them to take the money instead of purchasing these lands back, it was like history repeating itself when the Crown back in the 19th century fraudulently went into an agreement with another party other than the rightful owners to obtain the Waitara lands. The Crown has acknowledged that the sale in the 19th century was an illegal purchase, and the District Council acknowledges this when they agreed to offer these lands back to Te Atiawa to purchase. Otarawa believes that even though the Te Atiawa entity declined this offer, that the offer again was offered as in 19th century to an entity that did not have the right to make this decision. Otarawa Hapu believe that if the District Council goes ahead with the bill as it is, that they too will not be dealing with the rightful owners of the Waitara endowment lands. And until the District Council and the Waitara Hapu, along with the Waitara community, agree on the bill, this wrong will never go away and the issue of the Waitara lands will never be reconciled. New Plymouth District Council, as we see it, has the opportunity to deal with the rightful owners, being the Waitara Hapu, being Otarawa and Manukurahi, to offer the unsold leases to the Waitara Hapu for first right of refusal, to give back reserved land entitled to the rightful owners, being the Waitara Hapu, to give back surplus reserves unencumbered to the rightful owners, being the Waitara Hapu. Commit to sell the leases to the leasee immediately, as we understand the proposed bill does not need to be passed for this to happen, and can be done now. And I stress that for the sake of our community, that needs to be looked at immediately. And that all money can be held in trust until the committee is established. Finally, we ask that the District Council commit with the Crown to negotiate with the Taranaki Regional Council to also leave their share of the sales and leases with the Waitara Committee, thus acknowledging the theft of this land and being in possession, like the District Council, of stolen property, which in turn would help in the ongoing process of reconciliation. Nō reira, e te whānau o Waitara, oku whanaunga nā kaimahi o District Council me nā councillors. Tēnā koutou.
Ka pai.
Yes. I can email it to you. Was it all right? To you?
Would you be prepared to take any questions and clarification from the council?
Sure.
Are there any questions, clarification, seconds? Councillor Donovan?
Not quite sure how to phrase this, but I think from what you've said, it seems that there has not been a proper negotiation between Otarawa, Kurihi, known as Waitara Party, and Te Atiawa Treaty Settlement Group in terms of resolving those long-held differences. Is that the situation as you said?
Simply put, yes.
Is there a way forward that you can see?
The Office of Treaty Settlements and the Minister of Treaty Settlements, Chris Finlayson, has taken advice from his workers and chose to ignore by and large our concerns about the whenua in Waitara and has allowed a negotiated settlement to go through where we were simply did not participate at the proper levels. So that's something that we have to sort out amongst ourselves as an iwi. There's bound to be some issues we have to sort out ourselves. But putting all that aside, it's always been about the whenua here in Waitara for us. We've been consistent in that, and I think some of you with have been on the council for the longest might remember that this is not a new story from us. And we've come here today to find a way to participate where before we haven't been able to.
Have the Office of Treaty Settlements, in reading your submission, I don't see that there's been any useful consultation interaction that you are
Consultation is a big issue. Again, the councillors know all about consultation processes and the need for full and meaningful consultation. It's really difficult to talk about what happened in that forum and this one, but no, it didn't happen like that. And anyone who may wish to apply for the letters that were written between us and the Office of Treaty Settlements during that time will be able to see our consistent call for participation and the lands of Waitara to be returned, as has always been required. There's nowhere in history in Waitara where it was said, let's flick those lands.
Councillor Hedman.
Thank you, Chair, and Kia ora, thank you for your submission. I'd like to read a short part from the submission of Te Atiawa.
Excuse me, Councillor Hedman, I will not allow that. The points today are just clarification from the submitters themselves. They are not going to be required to comment on other people's submissions, so I'm sorry, I can't allow that. If you have a point of clarification, I'm happy to take that.
Well, I think Madam Chair, just supplementary, if you like, to Councillor Dynamite, which is the relationship between the Hapu and Te Atiawa. And Te Atiawa state that they are well aware of the position of their Hapu and they will work closely with them in terms of the Brown Road land, or transfer land and the right of first refusal land. And I wonder whether this in part assists you in going forward.
It's really magnanimous, a proposal of them. But again, I go back to the council and their recognition of mana korihi and Otarawa as being mana whenua in Waitara. I've never seen the council say that Te Atiawa has mana whenua in Waitara like they acknowledge that we have. So I put that back to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much for making this submission this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Ms. Anderson on behalf of the Waitara Pony Club. Welcome. And you're quite welcome to be the civil service chair.
Thank you. Could I approach you? Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, if I just may, before you begin, can I just say that in regard to the apologies we've received today, and in defence of Councillor Johnston, sometimes as councillors we make plans a year or two in advance. Unfortunately for Councillor Johnston, he committed himself to an overseas tour, and then we set the dates for the hearings, and it was going to cost him a huge amount of money. And I really think that in consideration of that, a lot of us do take overseas holidays that are planned a year or two in advance. We pay a lot of money for them. So he is very distressed that he cannot be here today. I really need to say that to you. Sure, all my councillors will tell you he has told us that several times. Councillor Brown is ill and has been away from council for some time. And unfortunately, Councillor Besick is away with business. And as I said, you know where the mayor is. So there are always good reasons that we do not attend. But I can assure you that a lot of them will also, I know the mayor will watch on the live streaming so that he catches up and on what is happening and what the comments are. So I just wanted to express that for you. Sorry, Ms. Hanson.
Madam Chair, Councillor Johnson mentioned to me that he will be watching the video later so that he can keep up with what has occurred.
Thank you, Councillor Mundell.
Good morning, Councillor Dudunsky and other councillors and officers. My name is Megan Gunderson and I'm representing the Waitara Pony Club this morning, and I've committed my verbal submission to writing for you in case I don't get through in my allocated time, which has been known to happen before. And in that case, everything I have to say is in this document, and I've highlighted in yellow for you the parts that you may like to adopt if in fact you were persuaded to do so by my submission this morning. So our three issues are that Waitara Pony Club has in fact already lost part of its leased land and is concerned at talk of more land being lost. We would like notification written into the bill if council decides to sell Ranfurly Park, and we would like council to take this opportunity to create a pathway to the beach from the Pony Club across the Brown Road land. Now, just a bit of background about Waitara Pony Club's situation. They have a lease until 2032 over land which is subject to the right of first refusal condition. This means that if council decides to sell Ranfurly Park, then Te Kohatikanga o Te Atiawa must be offered right of first refusal. And any sale would be subject to the lease, but even the current lease has little protection in it. Waitara Pony Club has just this year lost 4 acres of land to Warners. The lease has a condition allowing council to terminate it with 6 months' notice if it is in the public interest to do so, and that was the condition used to take the 4 acres away. And our understanding is that Warners say they are keen to buy the land at any time. This is really background information, and the point of this message to you is that Waitara Pony Club is already vulnerable to losing its land. The club gave in to significant council pressure to allow the new lease to Warners, and if there's more pressure applied, Waitara Pony Club may well be back before you again, because it won't have a qualifying minimum 2,000 metre cross-country track if any more land goes. And this means it can't run qualifying competitions, and it's only one of 2 cross-country tracks left in Taranaki out of the 7 we used to have 10 years ago. So the question of what's in the public interest would need to be debated, but that's just a flag really for you all about the club's situation. Now, more specifically in relation to the Waitara Endowment Lands Bill, there's 2 aspects I'd like you to consider. One is a notice of intention to sell is needed. So in the written submission we put in, we wanted the bill to contain a notice period if council was intending to sell the land. The officer's report at item A, page 2, paragraph B1, has already recommended that 40 days notice be given to other leaseholders, and we submit that the same notice should be given to Waitara Pony Club. The officer's report at page 19 on this notification issue says, officers agree that a notification requirement to any lessee or affected party of the initiation of the right of first refusal provisions is appropriate, but this would be managed outside of the legislation. I added that emphasis. But we don't know what's meant here. There's nothing in the lease itself or general law about notice of intention to sell being given, and we think we deserve the same protection as other leaseholders. So I ask that this meeting resolve that a few words be added to the officer's recommendation. And I've highlighted there in yellow, and I've just added the words in bold that I submit you could add into the recommendations, and that can be then legalised into the necessary wording in the bill. First point. Second point, an easement over the Brown Road land to Batterscombe Terrace to enable the possibility of horse riding from the Pony Club to the beach. The officer's report says, at page 19 again, that officers have inserted the ability to create an easement for walkway purposes in the technical survey plans. So that's great. That means that, public access by everybody is possible. And the officer's submission went on to say whether it allows horse access will depend on discussions with Te Kohatikanga o Te Atiawa as future owner of the land and council bylaws. But I ask, can you not take the initiative here? So often as horse riders, we are told we should have made our claim before land is developed. And now we are being told to wait until ownership is transferred. By that time, it's usually too late because a private owner does not have the same community obligations as council does. So if a walkway is permitted, all that needs to happen for horse access alongside it is maybe another 2 metre wide dirt strip with some boulders between them and a formed path for the walkers, so you've got 2 separate spaces. It means kids can ride from the Pony Club to the beach without the need for their parents to drive them. What's happening these days is that kids have not got the courage and independence they used to have because all they do is ride in boring arenas and mow in areas. Allow them the freedom to easily access the beach and allow the public to enjoy the spectacle of them riding their ponies down on the sand. The Brown Road area is flat and a walkway would be fairly straight with good lines of sight. It just needs to be made wide enough at the outset, and that's why the easement needs to be correctly drafted. So that's all I'm suggesting, is that there be some more work put into this question of the easement, which council officers have already allowed the possibility of, and just some further discussion with the horse community about how it could look. So I'm not asking for necessarily a decision today, but you'll see in my highlighted part that there could be some consultation about this, and a solution could be achieved. So please don't just take the easy option and adopt the officers' recommendations as they are, because horses on Waitara Beach would show a real diversity and vibrancy that is so much admired and that people love to see when they come to this district. Thank you, officers and councillors.
Certainly the questions you have raised will be answered by our officers at our meeting on the 20th. I see that they're writing frantically now, so we will expect those questions that you've raised to be answered and to see whether we can put those into the bill or not. We will let you know.
Thank you very much.
Are there, councillors, are there any other points of clarification, or are you all happy that those questions are answered on the 20th? All right. Thank you very much then, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Pleasure.
Our next submitter is Mr. Larson. Good morning. Welcome.
I'm actually going to sit down. Good morning, councillors, committee board members, public and the media, and council officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the proposed bill and the changes to it as outlined on page 2 of the agenda. I'd actually asked for 15 minutes, but having seen all the agenda and the officers' recommendations, I think I'll be a little bit less. I'm very pleased to see that this bill going ahead. It will be of great benefit to Waitara, will help heal or go some way towards healing a running sore, and it offers hope to those that in the past may have had no hope at all of ever freeholding. I am concerned, however, that there are still submissions against it from a historical view, as we've just heard before, and I hope that these historical issues can be resolved in due course. Going on to the bill itself, this bill will allow leaseholders to freehold, but I have some concerns as follows. On page 1 of the agenda, 1A, it says freeholders have a right to freehold at the unimproved land value that they can exercise at any time. Looking through the submissions, that seems to be the main issue for many, is the value, what the unimproved land value would be. I would just ask that it be fair and reasonable, not at the QV values, because I think those sometimes bear no relationship to reality for the land, but the unimproved value of the land. That is the land in the state that was first offered to the people who built the houses that went on there. And that's probably be substantially less than the QV value, because most of the land had a lot of work done to it before the houses were actually built. I'm thinking of people I know that spent weeks, if not months, draining the land, putting in walls, planting trees to try to take up the water out of the land, putting tons of soil on the land, this sort of thing. And I know, talking to people who sort of have been in their houses now, they were offered the land, took the land, built the houses, and then leased the land from the council, that most of the land was swamp, as we know in Waitara. In some cases, it was just sand and stones, basically. And this needs to be reflected in the valuation. I do know that some leaseholders have records of what the land looked like before they built on it. And I just hope that all these photos are still available and can be taken into account at the time of the valuations if they decide to freehold. There may be some leaseholders would be willing to set a precedent. Note in that they get their properties valued or the land valued before it's offered to everyone else, but just to set a precedent so that we have some idea, even if we could do it now before the bill goes through, just to get some idea of what the actual value would be. I think that would reassure a lot of people. I do note that a lot of leaseholders have now retired. When they originally settled on this leasehold land, they were working. It would be 2 people, probably one of them working, and they would have been able to afford the freehold. And I know people that have, over the years, have bought into the leasehold on the understanding that they'd be able to freehold it shortly, as in there were promises made in the past, as we know. These people are now retired. They will struggle to pay sort of a full mortgage, shall we say, for the land. I am concerned as well for the fact that within Waitara, the land, sorry, going back a step, the leasehold properties have to be, like say, a fair and reasonable value. I think there is going to be, you might have to charge 2 prices in fact, one for those that have been on the land for a long time and another price for the investors, speculators, commercial people. Because if you've got 4 or 5 properties and quite clearly you're in it for commercial gain, you shouldn't be paying the same as someone who's been on the land for 40 years. So you might have to think of, I don't know how we would get around that, but I don't think it'll be fair for the leaseholders that have been there for 40 years or longer to pay the same price as someone who's got 5 properties and was going to sell them off at buy the land at a cheap rate and then flick it on for a reasonable amount of profit. So for also looking at the funds that will be generated by this, they should need to be used for the benefit of the Waitara community, but not to be used on what I would consider to be normal council expenditure. I did notice from the submissions that there were a lot of people mentioned curb and channeling and stuff like that. That's actually the council's responsibility to pay for, not this fund. And I'd just like to remind the council that we're still waiting for our curb and channeling in Waitara. In fact, if you go out at lunchtime, I can take you around a few streets that haven't got it. But no, I think it'll be a real benefit to Waitara, this fund. I have also concerns on page 2 in the agenda, section 3, or B3, where it talks about the future council costs that cannot be met from that year's income and cannot reasonably be recovered from future income, can be met from fund if necessary. I'm not sure what costs would be that much, but I'm hoping that that does not happen. I would really be rather disappointed if we find out that this money that's coming in is suddenly eaten up by council costs. And I also don't want to see the existing funds that are there being used to pay for retrospective items, such as with the TRC. I think that would be a very sad day if that happened, shall we say. Because the things like the flood protection, as you can see in Waitara, we've now got this lovely big stop bank to protect us from a 100-year flood, unlike Wanganui. So we know what happened there, but Waitara is now very well protected, and it's been paid for out of existing funding. I don't want to see that retrospectively paid for by this funding. And final thing is the appointments to the board. I think it, as has already been mentioned, I'm sure it'll be mentioned by more than 1 or 2 today, we want to see Waitara representation on the board, whether it's from Te Aroha appointments or from the council appointments. It doesn't matter, but I think it'd be good to have at least half the board from within the Waitara boundaries. And that is my deputation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Councillors, are there any points of clarification? Councillor Chong.
Yes, thank you for that. I understand that why you would say that some people need a discount. What do you think the risk of, because obviously the council needs to get top dollar for the whole benefit of all ratepayers.
The ratepayers don't actually benefit.
Yeah, Okay.
in that respect.
All I can see is there will be some people that will get a discount or purchase a discount if we think of doing that. And then in a year or two's time, they could sell it at market rate. How can we stop that?
I don't think you can, but I think those that have, as I've said, I think those that are investors or speculators or those who are running it as a commercial business, then they would pay top dollar. But for those that have lived there, if it's your primary residence, then by all means you would be paying the unimproved land value with maybe a discount for the fact that the land was just swamp originally. But if you've got you live in one and you have another 3 or 4 that you are paying lease for, then those other 3 or 4, because to me that's you're obviously an investor or whatever, then you should be paying full rate for those.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Larson.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Mrs. DeRuta. Welcome, and again, just wherever you're comfortable, standing or sitting.
I'm not comfortable at all, no matter there or here.
It's the same this side of the table as well.
Good. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this, and also thank all the other speakers for the support. I think the principle behind the bill is great, that this land becomes for sale. I really support that. It's just, what's the English saying? The devil is in the detail, and that's my concern. My first point is actually, coincidentally, in answer of your question, how can you avoid that you guys give us a discount and then we will sell it at a commercial price? In the agenda, on page 8, if you look at the top thing, the top, that's how the officers address that. They say discounting of the asset would give that, like, instead of a property for 100,000, this is an example, you would give it for 90,000, and then the moment you give us the land, we immediately run to the market and sell it for 100, and we make 10,000. I think that this example is incomplete. The officer's forgotten a crucial point. And for that, I want to bring to your attention that we have already paid to buy the land. We bought the lease. And for that, I would like to go to my submission, which is on page 63 in that 350 pages that you guys have to read. Good luck. It's worth it, though. If you look on that page 63, you see a table. And what I've done is I've gone in the internet and I looked at the properties that were for sale, and then I looked on what the land value would be based on the unimproved land value, based on the rates, because I understood from the officers here that that is very close to what it's going to be. Now, if you look at the last column in there, the difference, that is what we pay extra based on those costs. So you take the total value, you take off the house value, that would be the land value. But when you buy a property in Waitara, it doesn't work like that. Because beside buying the house, you also buy for the right to lease. And that column in the back is what we pay extra for the right to lease. And compare that with the asking price, you see that's a substantial part of that money. Now keep this in mind. I hadn't prepared it like this, but keep this in mind and go back to your example on page 8. The property is worth 100,000, the land. You give it me for 90. I've already paid, the average of that, 40,000. So I actually gonna pay for the 90 I actually paid 130,000. I tell you, I will be bloody lucky if I can find someone who pays me 130,000. So it's not that I can sell it off for 100 and make a profit. If I sell it off for 100, I'm 30,000 short. And that is something that is not addressed very well in this piece of paper. They keep saying from you get it for a good deal, but they forget that all of us at a certain stage have paid for this already, and not small amounts either. We've paid for the right to lease. We wanted that right to lease. We want to live here. But it is a lot of money that is not taken into consideration, and I would like to ask you guys to consider that when you look at this bill. Now, I hadn't planned it like this, so now I have to pick up where I was. So what we think is a fair price is that if you guys have a look statistically, and I can't do it, I can only see what's on the internet, statistically look at what people have paid for the right to lease, and when you set a price, that you say the unimproved land value minus what we've paid already, on average. You can't do it per individual because we're not all good negotiators and some pay more than others, but that you take that into consideration. And there's one little other thing about the same aspect. They say, oh, don't give a discount because it's only $10 a week that it's going to make a difference. If you're on a minimum income, $10 a week is a lot of money. And that could be just that little bit that helps you tip over. So I think that discount, giving $10 is something to seriously consider. Another point I would like to bring to your attention is that the council keeps the right to sell it to a third party if the leasee cannot buy it or does not want to buy it. This is brought up in page 10 of the agenda. It says here that it's most likely that it's only be if there are such few leases available that the cost will outweigh the rent. So it's no longer economically viable for the council to retain the portfolio. That sounds a bit conflicting. Because if the costs outweigh the rent, how can the new person that's going to buy it manage to do better? Because they say here, if that happens, oh, don't worry, because nothing is going to change. The rents are all set in the public lease body. So the only difference, it says at the bottom, will be that who you pay the rent to. Instead of the council, you pay it to Fletcher Building Construction. Again, this section is not complete, because the Body Act also allows people to take into consideration the cost when they set the rent. Now, they just told us that the costs have gone too high. You don't want to keep it because the costs have gone too high. So the next owner will have the same problem, isn't it? The costs are too high. So what are they going to do? They're going to increase the rent. Of course they go. And they have the right to do that with the Public Body Act. Also, they will have to make some money. If it's a commercial outfit, they will not do it for the love of it. So the rent will go up. No matter what the statement is in this paper, to cover the cost and the income, the rent will go up. Now, the only way to fight this, if you think that the rent goes up too high, is to go to court. And I want to bring to your attention that at the end of the whole exercise, the few people that haven't bought yet will be the few people who cannot buy. Everyone else who has managed the mortgage or has bought the land. So the few people who still have not bought will be the people who are most vulnerable, I can't say that word, are the most people who need it most, who need our support most. They will not be able to shoulder a court case to battle the rent increases. So based on that, although I think that the council should consider not to have the right to sell the land to a third party that is commercial. By all means, adding 40 days waiting time, consulting with the leaseholders and the trust doesn't help if you don't have the money. But what would help is if we put in a statement that, yes, you can sell the land to third parties, but these parties cannot be commercial parties, so that at least the benefit... I'm lost. Too nervous. Okay. But that it cannot be sold to commercial parties, like a Fletcher building or something, who will have a big overhead cost, which they can, with the Legal Body Act, put into the rents for those few people who will still be left. Last but not least, I'm nearly there. You guys say that you cannot help with financing, as it says on page 9. That's not within the mandate of the local government to offer an interest-free loan, and you don't want to act as a bank. Thank you. In my submission, I don't ask you to give us an interest-free loan, but I ask you to go to the local government and ask them to give us an interest-free loan, because that is something the council can do. You can support this and go to the national government and ask them to give us an interest-free loan. I think most of the more mature Waitara residents have not had a student loan. This would be a good opportunity for the government to give us a student loan so that we can make a step up in our life. And if another option that you maybe can do is help us by paying it through the rates, like you do with the insulation of the houses, that is an option you maybe could consider. So, once again, I want to thank you for getting this far with this bill and giving us the opportunity to talk. I realize that the issues I bring forward are not really your problem. If you want to make a commercial decision, don't listen to what I've asked. Go for the money. But I think the difference between you guys and a commercial institution is that you guys care. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification? Councillor Jordan?
Would it be possible or fair that the leaseholder's interest in their land be somehow recognised by some monetary value as a percentage of maybe the purchase price?
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
As in that when a leaseholder purchased their section,
Yeah.
that they paid for the right to lease.
Yeah.
That there was a right, they actually had to pay for the right to lease. There was
Yes.
an amount of dollars involved. And that be somehow recognised when they purchased their land, of the freehold of the land. So the leaseholders' rights were recognised somehow monetarily.
That would be great, yes. That's what I try to say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Dijnhoven?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The idea of council acting as banker you have raised in your submission. Have you thought about the possibility of the council acting as a banker, as it sometimes does with rates arrears, and having perhaps a lien against the property, or maybe the concept of a reverse mortgage for those who can't afford to actually buy the property outright?
You mean the council doing that? Or?
Perhaps, or acting as the facilitator for some of the commercial banks that do this work.
Yeah, that would be good.
Because I think the issue that you are raising is that there are many people who wouldn't be able to afford to purchase the lease because of their stage in life. But this would give a way of doing that.
Yes, yes. That would definitely be an option. The officers have suggested that they go on a talk with the banks to achieve that. I still think that the system like an interest-free loan, like you do with student loans, would be a better solution. Also because with student loans you only pay it back when you can, which would be for all the people here a good solution. And I think because most of us didn't got the student loan, well, why not now?
All right.
It could be secured against the property, presumably, too.
So it's even better.
Perhaps that's again a point for discussion next week, and it's obviously going to be picked up, as you can tell. So thank you very much for taking your opportunity to speak to us. We appreciate it. Councillors, our next submitter is Mr. Beggs. Welcome. And again, just where you're comfortable. I shouldn't use that word, should I? People are telling me they're not comfortable, but, well, wherever you feel you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Wayne Beggs, born and bred in Waitara. I've been a real estate agent in this town since 1989, and I'm still selling real estate in this town as of today. In fact, sold a leasehold property last week. I applaud the council for getting this far because, you know, I've been waiting a long time to see some movement in the issues around leasehold property in Waitara. However, I have a huge issue with, as a previous speaker spoke about, the unimproved land value in Waitara, the ability for people to freehold at unimproved land value. So I've done some figures which I really didn't need to do because the council appointed Telfer Young to put out this document, which we all got, and in this document, Telfer Young have provided a graph for the last 10 years, which would have come from the Real Estate Institute statistics. It clearly shows, well, it does show, the average sale price for freehold land and the average sale price for leasehold land over the last 10 years. And the graph line shows the difference for each year in that value. And I'll run through it very quickly just to give you an idea where I'm going with this. That in 2006, the difference was 50,000. In 2007, the difference was 50,000. In 2008, it was 70. In 2009, it was 65. In 2010, it was 60. 2011, it was 75. 2012, 80. 2013, 75. 2014, 55. 2015, which was a real blip, was 130, the difference between leasehold and freehold. So what I'm saying to you that as a real estate agent, I see this, that if someone, and it did happen last week, sold their house, or a purchaser bought a house in Waitara for $165,000, a leasehold property. Now the council office is saying that the average unimproved land value in Waitara is around 90 grand. I see sometimes they make it 85 grand depending on how they're feeling at the time, but let's work on 90. So I sell this property to these people at $165,000. They now have the ability to freehold the property for $90,000. Add that up, it comes to $245,000. They come back to me a week later and say, Wayne, we want to sell our house. We've paid 165, we've paid 90 to freehold it. It should be worth 245. I say, sorry, it's not. There's no way that house is worth 245,000. It's worth 210, 220. It's backed up by these figures that I quoted to you earlier, that the difference between freehold land and leasehold land in Waitara over that 10-year period, allowing for the blip that was 130,000, is $64,000. If you take that blip out at 2015, which was caused by numerous properties being sold at around 100,000 or less, leasehold properties, and some freehold properties selling for over 400, which is very unusual in Waitara. In fact, one sold for 465. Created a huge gap between leasehold and freehold. But you take that out, and the average difference between leasehold and freehold sales in Waitara for the last 9 years is $57,000. Yet you're asking the people of Waitara to pay unimproved land value of $90,000. It's a rort, it's ridiculous. Also, down here in the same report, it says, if we refer to the graph above, this is Telfer Young quoting this, the average sale price indicates that currently there is a clear margin in value between freehold and leasehold property that is roughly equivalent to the underlying value of the land. From this, one might reason that freeholding is a viable exercise. That is bullshit. Absolute crap. I could sit here all day and give you examples of the last 5 to 10 years of properties that have leasehold properties that sold in Waitara, that if you went to freehold them, they no way equate to this ridiculous thing of 90,000 or 85,000 or unimproved land value. Anyway, now that I've got that off my chest. I've given you one example. I could name numerous examples. I'll go back to 2013 when the property values in Waitara decreased. Headline in the daily news, headline, Waitara property values decreased by 8.6%. This was done by Quotable Value, who's again appointed by the council to do our 3-year valuations so that we can establish a land value and a CV and an RV. So I did some studies and some statistics, and I did a study of a dozen properties in Waitara that were previously had a capital value of between $210,000 and $250,000. Without fail, every single one of those properties had $20,000 lopped off its value. $20,000, not 8.6%, so not 17,000, not 19,000, a straight 20 grand. So I rang Quotable Value up, and that, to me, that's incompetent, and they didn't admit it, but they said it was wrong what they'd done, because 8.6% should have come off. Not just a straight 20,000, that's just laziness. But here's my point. The 20,000 came off the value of improvements. It didn't come off the land value at all. The land value, in fact, on one of my properties, I've got a couple of leasehold properties, my property went from 210,000 capital value to 190,000 capital value. So, but my land value, which was 93,000, went to 97,000. So they've put the land value up, but they've cut 20 grand off our properties. How can they do that? You know, if the value of the property's gone down, surely the land value's gone down. It has to. It's, you know, farm values go down, residential land values go down, commercial land values go down. Land values do go down, believe it or not, as do house prices. So, again, the land values in Waitara are too high. Now, I did another study, and I took this to Quotable Value, and I showed the last 5 years, section sales in Waitara this is back in 2013, that showed the average sale price for sections in Waitara was $75,000. 5 years, that showed, over a period of 5 years. Yet, our land values average $90,000 a year. Our valuation averages $90,000 a year. Again, I don't see how this can be, you know. So you're trying to tell us, people of Waitara, that you're doing a great job for us, and you are, but this unimproved land value, to me, freeholding it, is just rubbish. People aren't going to afford to be able to do it. I'm stunned by the whole thing. The council says clearly that they have to get a fair and equitable return on the asset, and I can understand that. So I speak to council officers, and I speak to Telfer Young, and I speak to Quotable Value, and they say we have to be seen to be getting a fair and equitable return on the money for the council, our client. I go, that's great, and they start quoting Nelson, Auckland, Napier, Motueka, all who have leasehold, masses of leasehold property. Yet, this is Waitara, this is not Auckland, this is not Nelson, this is not Napier, this is Waitara, you know, a fair and equitable return. The council was prepared to offer the entirety of the Waitara leasehold land to iwi to the Crown for iwi settlements or whatever. And I know that was a bulk discount, such and such. So was that a fair and equitable return on our money for the people of Waitara? Was that a fair and equitable return? Yet now you're saying we're going to be paying 90 grand. Is that a fair and equitable return? I don't think so. You can offer it on one hand over here and say, well, that's fair and equitable. But over here you're saying, well, no, the people of Waitara, they're going to have to pay unimproved land value of 90 grand average. Is that fair and equitable? I don't think so. I don't know many people here that will agree with it. Another issue I have really is in another document put out, item A, page 7. Item A, page 7, sorry. When you talk about people who can pay this money back by taking out a loan at 4.25% over a period of 25 or 30 years, I can tell you the majority of leaseholders in Waitara are elderly. And by elderly, I'm probably saying over 60. So for them to take out a 30-year mortgage or a 25-year mortgage is bloody ridiculous, you know. And to quote this, the officers that prepared this and saying 4.25%, that's great. It's 4.25% now. They're at a historic low. They've never been this low ever in the history of New Zealand. Are they going to stay this way for the next 30 years? Doubt it. But I'm not a banker, you know. I'm just a real estate agent. This is misleading. You're just trying to tell people, hey, go and borrow the money from your bank. Take it out over 25 or 30 years. Well, it's crap, you know. My mum's 76, she can't take out a 30-year loan. Who's going to loan her? You know, she's got a leasehold property, it's got a land value of $93,000, you know. She just can't do it. The majority of people in Waitara can't do this. They can't do this at unimproved land value. They just can't do it. No matter what you say, no matter how you push us around, people can't do it. So while you're offering people the golden egg over here, you're taking it away from them over here because they just can't do it. People cannot do it. I can't say that enough. You guys need to look at a fair and equitable solution for the people of Waitara. And talking about discounting, a previous speaker's spoken about discounting, how people would get at a discount prior to, say, the unimproved land value is an average of 90 now, and we'll discount it to 70, and then people will go and sell it. I've given you examples of real estate transactions, and I can sit here all day and give you transactions that they won't make money out of it because, like I said to you, that I just sold another one for $147,000. It's got a land value of $83,000 or $84,000. Anyway, that equates to about $240,000. Again, if they come back to me and put that on the market, I can't get them $240,000. I can get them $210,000 or $220,000. That's the market value for property in Waitara. That's the freehold market value. So why would they do it? They're losing money. Why would you freehold your land in Waitara? You're losing money. I've said enough, I think, so. I think I'm butting my head against the wall, as I did with council previously and as I have done with Telfer Young in the past. But I think you guys need to take this into consideration and be fair to the people of Waitara. One final thing is, I went to the last meeting that was held out here in Waitara Memorial Hall. The mayor sat there and took it all in all night and didn't say too much. But at the end, he got up and said something that was quite moving, really, to me. He said that for this bill to go forward, we have to go to Parliament together as the people of Waitara, not just the leaseholders, but the people of Waitara and the council have to go forward to Parliament to get this bill through so that there's a solution established for the people of Waitara. And it has to be a good solution for the people of Waitara. Well, a good solution for the people of Waitara would be getting these bloody land values at a rate that people can afford to buy them. That's the solution for Waitara. That's Waitara going forward, not backward, because we're not going to go forward unless people can freehold their land. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chong?
Thank you. It's very emotional, and obviously it's worth being emotional for. You did mention that the majority of people are elderly and they can't afford a 30-year mortgage. Are you all well aware that there's a product out there called reverse mortgage that is only for people over 65, and unfortunately the banks don't do?
I'm well aware of it. How many people want to do that? Why should people take out a reverse mortgage? I mean, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make the point really that in here there is an option to do that kind of thing. Take out, the council's put this forward, or whoever's drafted this put this forward about these 25, 30-year loans at 4.25%.
Not talking about that.
No, I don't. Well, I'm not talking about a reverse mortgage either. I mean, I don't want my mum to take out a reverse mortgage. Why should she? I mean, it's an option, yes.
Yep.
It's an option for you guys to talk about lowering the land values in Waitara as well.
Would you agree, though, that the most important thing for us at the moment is to get this bill through so that we can have the conversation that follows on regarding the valuations?
Yes, totally. I'm applauding the bill. Totally. I'm applauding the bill. But my worry is that you get this bill through, and in here it says that you're going to freehold the land at unimproved land value. Once the bill's gone through, how do we stop that? The unimproved land value is the unimproved land value. So how do we stop that? Because if this goes to Parliament and it goes through, what recourse have we got then? All you're going to say is, okay, it's gone through, great. Now you guys, the average land value in Waitara, or the average unimproved land value in Waitara, you're quoting, or your council officers are quoting between 85 and 90,000. So that's what we're going to get. That's not how I see it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Facts in here provided by your own valuers support that.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank you very much for your submission, and I would just ask the officers, there's been a document tabled from Telfer Young which I don't think I've seen. Is it possible to get copies of those to councillors, please? Thank you, and that will be done. Thank you.
Everybody in Waitara have got these.
Yes, thank you.
They're available to everybody.
We'll make sure that we have had the opportunity to read them as well. Our next submitter is Mr Dudansky. Welcome.
Good morning, councillors, Mayor, Mayoress, Deputy Mayoress, and council officers. Excuse me, getting a little bit tongue-tied there,
You're fine.
but you're all doing a good job. I'm going to speak a little bit different today. I'm a community board member, and I hear lots of pain in my community. I thought that Te Atiawa should have taken the settlement with no money paid over. The reason why I say that is because somebody stole it off them in the first place and then tried to sell it back to them. And I'm sure if I went into a TV shop and flogged the TV and then tried to sell it back to them, they'd put me in jail. I know that's bringing up the past, but the people are still hurting, and we heard it this morning earlier. I'm not sure about Te Atiawa and Atiawa, but I know the people of Waitara are still hurting. How do we right those wrongs? How do we get through this? We don't get it by putting people into poverty on the land, the very land that they owned. We don't get it by putting leases up so people can't afford to put food in the cupboards to feed their children. We don't get it by putting elderly into debt before they die so we can all buy new stuff for our town. I went to a family the other day, he brought up 3 boys on his own. He pays $130 a week in lease, plus rates. He gets $230 a week from social welfare. Is that right or is that wrong? That is wrong. Humanitarian reasons, that is wrong. We are worrying about the poverty in the world and we're creating it. As a community board member, I stand here and nearly cry because I see this all the time. I see kids going to school without lunches. What have we created here? A monster? We can't get through this. We can't work through this without making money. And then giving it back to us. Freeholders will get a ride on the poverty of others. And I'm a freeholder. I am absolutely appalled. I told my daughter to buy a leasehold property because it was cheap, so she didn't have to pay rent. I could eat my tongue. We tried to put a fence around the house. It was full of concrete. They've been filling up there with concrete for years, and it's just a landfill, unbeknown to us. What's the value of that? About $10,000 probably. Because if you try to clean it up, you've got no show. And I'm not a fan of using leasehold money for the benefit of the town. The reason why I say that is simple. Freeholders get a ride. Leaseholders have to pay. Families paying, elderly paying, so that everybody can have a flash town. Let's build this town with our rates. That's what they're for. Curb and channeling in Waitara, somebody put it up before. Ha! A joke. It's a bit like the Mount Messenger bypass. It'll never happen. So I'm going to leave you with those thoughts today. And on behalf of those poor people out there that are struggling, I try and help them out. But I can't afford to, I'm a pensioner. Lady said $10 is a lot. Have a think about that joker paying $130 to council. How did we ever get to that stage? How did we ever get to that stage? We sit here, not a murmur. Well, those people suffer. They're not here today walking through that door because they're too damn ashamed. And that's my addressing for you today. Go forward, try and work this out for us, get a better solution. I know you're capable of it. There's good people up here. There's good people who work in council. Please go forward and work it out for us. And I'll take questions you need to, but I probably won't be able to answer them. I'm that emotionally upset at what happens in Waitara at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Dudansky. Are there any questions or clarifications? No, that was clear. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the chance.
You're welcome. The final submitter this morning in this session is Mrs. Burnside. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Kia ora koutou, Deputy Mayor Dudansky, councillors, council officers and my friends in whānau from Waitara. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the Waitara Endowment Bill this morning. I'll be short and sweet. I want a cup of tea as well. As I've said in my written submission, I make no comment on the merit or otherwise of the bill in its entirety. I would like to draw Council's attention, though, please, to two sections which relate purely to funding. One of the parts of the bill proposes that the Taranaki Regional Council will also have the ability to recover costs from its 2012-2015 flood protection scheme, as this represents the Regional Council's most significant investment in Waitara in recent years. As previous submitters have also talked about, and others will probably add to, these works were pre-programmed. They were funded by general rates. The plan by Regional Council is to have a targeted rate over the North Taranaki Regional Council rates over 30 years. Those monies are to be paid back. That flood protection scheme with our new flood bank was $3 million. As well as the $3 million, there was also $2 million for the Waiwakau and the Stony River flood protection. In total, that's $5 million. But Regional Council wants to claw back just the Waitara part, not the Stony River, not the Waiwakau flood protection, because they can't. Yet now they're saying, well, actually, we've invested $3 million in Waitara, we're going to get our money back. That's not right. That is part of Regional Council's job. Their job is to protect us. Their job is to build flood protection. They cannot claim that money back out of our fund. That fund only has $3 million in it as it is, and that's it. So, firstly, I do not agree that the Regional Council should be able to have a should be able to take that money back. It should be a targeted rate. All of us that are fortunate enough to have a rates bill, we don't mind paying a little bit more to protect our Waitara River. The second part of the bill also proposes that there is the accumulated rentals fund. There is a proposal that both District Council and Regional Council can claim back their costs to date with this legislation, with this bill. There's a third party in this bill, and that is Te Atiawa. Up until now, it appears as though there's been a negotiation with New Plymouth District Council and Te Atiawa, and then all of a sudden, District Councillors come along and said, well, actually, here's my mistress, here's Regional Council over here, we're going to enjoin her as well. It's not right. So if Regional Council and District Council are going to claim back their funds, their costs for the legislation, Te Atiawa should be able to afford that also. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Councillors, clarification? Any questions? No, that was very clear. Thank you very much. And what we will do now is pause for morning tea, and we will resume at 10:30. So thank you all for this session, and we will see you back here at 10:30. Could I ask everyone to resume their seats, please?
He's playing noughts and crosses.
Thank you, everyone. Our first submitter in this section is Mr Marshall. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, councillors. When I received my submission form to fill in, I only had a choice of yes, I like it, or no, I don't. Because I disagree with parts of it, I tick no. I can't support the bill in its current form. Whilst it has many attributions I do like, and I like those, there's some I don't. I want to keep it simple. I'm going to stick just to 3 points. I know a lot of my fellow submitters will also have other points of consideration. So my first point that I have is around certainty. There's a definite lack of certainty in the bill for our community. Whilst there seems to be lots of certainty for the council, it is limited in its certainty for us as leaseholders, us as a Waitara community, and us as North Taranaki. There needs to be a certainty in the approach of the valuation of the leasehold land, and I know you've heard some comments on that. The market valuation is just a terminology. I know that when I instruct a valuer to go and value one of my properties or a property that I'm interested in buying, I give him an instruction that is so that he, as an independent, will come up with something that I might favour, and I pay for that courtesy. I know that the value for the New Plymouth District Council, and I know, and I like the guys because I use them myself, is instructed by the council to get valuations on land. In the future, the leaseholder will pay for that instruction, and I can't see it as being independent. Even though I might have paid for it, I didn't give instruction. There has to be a more certain way for us going forward as a community, for us to have certainty over as to what that process will be, so that we can all agree that what the value is that we will be paying is fair, equitable, and just. Valuation, I know, is not a science, meaning that I can't put two independent values in two different rooms and hoping they'll come up with the same result. They don't. So the limitations in this bill don't go far enough in giving us certainty as a community, and in fact, if anything, it makes it look like the council is loading the bill in favour of themselves. You see, there's some references to the officer's writing, and he pulls out $85,000 as an opportunity of what would be equitable in a current lease for that particular situation. But you know, if I was to buy a new section, I would get stormwater, footpaths, curbing, and other infrastructures, even so much as including fibre. None of those seem to be awarded to most of our leaseholders. We don't get curbing. Many of us don't have sidewalks. We certainly don't have stormwater. Oh yes, no, hang on. We do have stormwater. It flows off the road into our driveway. It's supposed to flow into a pipe and taken out somewhere where it's convenient. And you're challenging me by saying I've got to pay what would be like a new price. I disagree. There's nothing fair in that. Watching kids walk past my driveway in an inch of water as they go to school with wet feet doesn't what I consider form a healthy community. I propose that you consider the valuation process in your bill, and that you'd actually come up with a solution that might include a choice of valuers coming to the table and coming up with a negotiable value. My second point is costs. Costs to be awarded to the NPDC and the TRC for expenses incurred in regards to litigation and the process. The problem I have, again, is the lack of certainty from our perspective who will be paying it. Is this to go back to 1989 when the North Taranaki District Council formed a bill that failed? The process of the hearings and all that went through that, have you guys got a recorded cost of all that that would be included in the bills? Because you've got no limitation. This will be a statute law, which means it has no statutory limitations as to where the costs will go and how far back to. You also include a suggestion of cost for the TRC. Can I remind the council that the TRC stood with the Waitara leaseholder against the New Plymouth District Council on the grounds that we were challenging the council on the fact the land was held in trust and that you had some duties of trust to adhere to. Are you awarding costs to the TRC for that venture? If so, we've got some costs. Are you going to meet those too? There has to be a sense of equity in this process. And these variables that you put into it, which seem to be loaded certainties for the NPDC, seem to be uncertainties for us that are inequitable. In regards to costs, under the OIA, the Official Information Act, Rochelle West applied through the TNL for a list of costs that the council had incurred against the Waitara leaseholders. She was told, and I've seen the document, that that was going to be a cost to the TNL of a few $1,000s because we have to look for it. Does that mean you now have those figures? If so, why aren't they included in the process of the public submissions? If you haven't got it, who's going to pay for you to find out what the total costs were? Are we as leaseholders again going to be paying for that out of that situation? Did not insurance pay a reasonable proportion of that? I don't think the Waitara leaseholder or the Waitara ratepayer should be entitled to cost for the work that we did. If that's the case, I would like to see the equitable side of that too and say, look, this is a burden that we shoulder as a community of people so that we get the right process going forward. My third point, I welcome open discussion in the submission process. I feel you have failed in the governance of this. And I'll give you some examples. The timing has been sped through too quickly. There are many people that I speak to from day to day who have not heard that there is a submission going on regarding the Waitara land. Surely, I know you have told the public, because that's how I found out, but not everybody has the same access to media that used to be around 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And so people are living in the dark to this whole process. The onus of responsibility for the submission process is actually on the council, not on the people within the community to find out what the council's doing all the time. You are our governors. You have a responsibility to communicate with us effectively so that we can be efficient in this process of the submission. The timing was too quickly, and I'll give you the results. Over 900 submitters in 2003, again over 900 submitters in 2004 to the same situation we're in now, and today 141 is a problem, a lesser problem today than what it was 12, 14 years ago? No, the problem is just as big. The issue is just as important. The problem is that a lot of people have not heard about the submission process and that they have the ability to say it and speak into it. And I think that's a failure on this part. I end by saying thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for us to go through this, and I look forward to seeing favourable results that also amount to the NPDC being in favour, as well as the ratepayer being in favour, as well as the Waitara community being in favour, as well as the leaseholder being in favour. And I thank Te Aotearoa for being a part of this process and actually helping us as a community go through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I normally don't get asked questions.
Different today. Councillor Duynhoven, followed by Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr Marshall, your submission to us today was clear, but it was quite different to what you provided to us in written form. Is there anything in the written submission about leaseholders having first rights, about the use of residual land, about the provision for Waitara that you would like to expand on?
Thank you, Councillor. No, I'm quite happy to leave that with other submitters who are also covering that same subject. I feel time is important, and I like to respect that time and not include every basic point within the process. I think Waitara has been given a good opportunity in this bill in the sense that we will get a right to freehold, and it'll be written into our lease as well as written into the freehold title. So I think that's good. I just think the uncertainties are around what that value and what that process will be.
Well, could I ask, as a supplementary, Madam Chair, in your first point about leaseholders being offered first rights only, you talk about there should be a protection in place that stops the council offering the land to someone else. Would you like to tell us why you have that view and what the practical effects of that
I think the
might
time
be?
limitations, councillor, that the council is saying to the leaseholder that you have to speak to in regards to the option to buy is limited. Okay, so if you say you have an approach by a group of people who want to buy a large proportion of the leasehold land that hasn't been freeholded, you've actually already entered into negotiations. It can take some time between that particular process and the actual leaseholder who actually is on that land to know that you are now entering into a sale process. All of a sudden, that leaseholder is now forced to a number of days to make a reply back to the council as to whether they will freehold. Unfortunately, they're now faced with the issue that there is a second person who is actually providing a different value and can end up in a monkey court that who has to pay the higher value with what would be an issue quite easily settled if we had given a year's notice or somewhere along the lines that that we are considering looking at other people as opposed to having anyone in mind.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Chong?
Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned that when you went to get evaluations, you could instruct them on how it could be worded or something like that, and obviously that's why you pay extra for evaluation. Are you aware that 80% of lenders out there now are insisting their applicants use core logic to prevent that? They've already cottoned onto that?
Yeah, you and I are in the same profession, councillor. Yeah, I understand that. And I understand that process, but you're not including that in this process, and the reality of it is, I can see history past, and going forward, the council will continue with its current form of using one valuer to come up with a valuation.
Supplementary to that? So are you suggesting that, similar to the core logic, the council starts using that sort of system?
Yeah, see, I'm not in governance, so I'm not in a position to give you advice because I'm not suitably qualified as to how you should go about through the process of giving advice in regards to how you use a valuer, okay? Just making that disclaimer aware.
And I'm sure if you did, you'd want to send us an invoice as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Madam Chair, I didn't know that was an option. Okay. Council, you have to have another look at this valuation process. There is always doubts around valuations, and you and I work in that same profession, and we know that we can, depending on who we use, get a value that might go our particular way for our particular purpose, okay? And there's always doubt that if you use the word independent, it means that no one has a conflict of interest, no one's paying for that advice, that's getting that advice, no one's instructing on that advice. Independent means total hands-off to get an opinion.
Hence core logic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think asked and answered. No further questions. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Martin.
Madam Chair.
And our next submitter is Mrs. Williams. Welcome, and again, just your choice as to whether you sit or stand.
I will stand.
Okay.
Before I start, I would just like to say that 45 years ago, we were told we could buy our section. We're still waiting. Isn't that nice? In 2004, the council called for submissions on the leasehold sections. 80% wanted to freehold, 17% wanted to go to iwi. But the council did as they wanted and went against what the Waitara people wanted. I wonder if these submissions will actually make a difference, or if it is a done deal, as even the mayor who set up this meeting didn't see fit to come here today and would rather go on his peace march. Reading the Daily News, most of the submissions wanted a lower freeholding price, but council staff didn't recommend this, so Waitara people's views don't matter once again. When we could buy our section all those years ago, it would have been at the most $10,000. Now you're trying to tell us we have to pay $93,000 for that same section that government took off us. Well, if government think we should pay that, we'll pay our 10, they can pay the other 83. They were the ones that took it off us,
They're the ones that can fix it. The whole episode, be it lease or freehold, has put a lot of stress on a lot of people. If you have a freehold section, you can do as you like with it, like build a shed, dig a hole, etc. With the leasehold section, there are two parts to the land. One, the ownership of the section, and two, the section itself. On page 6 of the meeting agenda, it states the iwi were offered the sections cheaper because they were only being sold the ownership of the land and not the use of it. The MPDC said it was at true market value set by their valuers. Is this not the same with leaseholders, as they are only buying the title as they own the use of it already, but are being charged over 4 times more than what it was offered to the Crown for? Is this not the same? If the new Plymouth District Council sells the sections to a third party, it won't be at GV, it would be worked out the same as to sell to the Crown. So in other words, the new Plymouth District Council will stick it up the Waitara people once again. Page 7 goes on about how much your repayments will be if you borrow the money to buy your sections. They cannot guarantee how much the interest rate will be over the next 21 years, so these figures don't count. Page 9 states there are independent mechanisms using registered valuers to determine the fair price with our leases. We were told by Adam Boone of Telfer Young that he had been instructed to put leases up as they were too cheap, and if you wanted to go arbitration, it would cost you $10,000. And that's something else we had. Catherine Kreutz, whatever her name is. When we rang her about going to arbitration, she said you cannot go as a group, you have to go individually. And when we said no, we were not going individually, that we could go as a group, she said, you will do as you're told. Now that is the sort of attitude we've had from council right throughout the years. Is it correct that the new Plymouth District Council put the job as valuer up for tender and Telfer Young are under contract to the new Plymouth District Council? If so, they are not independent. Page 11, it would be unrealistic to expect the trust to pay a market price, but it is okay to rip off leaseholders. Page 23, the council has no discretion as the rents are set by independent valuation process and is governed by the Public Bodies Leases Act 1968. This is not correct, as it states the leases can be lowered at any time they so desire for any reason. The Ombudsman stated, and I have got the proof of that from a letter from them in there, that on the grounds of hardship they can be lowered. But Peter Hancock stated, I don't care what you have, we won't lower them. The Act states a fair lease, not inflated leases. Another part of the Act states that you go to arbitration over your lease, which a group of us are doing and are waiting to sign our new lease, but the new Plymouth District Council have instructed the banks, I think they think they're the Gestapo, that they have no security on their loan and to foreclose on these mortgages. We had a revolving credit if we needed money, like perhaps for a new roof on our house. But we will have to live with the leaks as the bank has frozen our credit on instructions from the new Plymouth District Council. I know of another person who wanted to use their home for security, but couldn't, and another who had missed 2 lease payments and had 2 weeks to pay off their whole loan. No warning, just a registered letter delivered on the Friday, and you pay your loan in 2 weeks, all instructed from the council. We had an agreement that they could take out of our account the amount of my lease until after we go to arbitration, but they have taken more than that each month. We are sick and tired of the treatment dished out to the people of Waitara by council staff like Peter Hancock, saying the reason the sections were cheaper to the Crown was because they were buying in bulk. Now we have another reason, or all the other different reasons that the leases have increased so much over the last 5 years. Like Waitara land prices have gone up over the last 3 years. When proved wrong, he said, it was because they had a Nurunui. And then when that was proved wrong, oh, then all New Zealand. And then he states, how lucky you are when you look at Cornwall Park and Greymouth. They has been set, when you look at Cornwall Park and Greymouth has just been set at $3,000. You cannot compare Waitara with Cornwall Park, for goodness sakes. I think Waitara and Greymouth are the same with high employment and low income. But our leases are set at $5,000, but commercial leases only have to pay less than half of that amount. In the treaty settlement, the iwi were offered the money or the land, and they chose the money. In 1994, the then Treaty Minister Doug Graham told the New Plymouth District Council, the government, not council, is responsible for obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi. Waitara people cannot be held accountable for what the Crown did 150 years ago. The New Plymouth District Council has no right to give away Waitara assets in a secret Sandhill deal behind closed doors. I would have thought, as New Plymouth was so racist, as our mayor states, that there would have been some New Plymouth Council land given, like their half of the airport, but it looks like Waitara gets milked again, so the council looks good. In 2013, the mayor stated to the leaseholders in front of TV1, it's what we do next that counts. I stand with you, I promise you that. We are still waiting. Last census, the average take-home wage was the same amount as the CEO gets for her transport allowance, or a quarter of what Craig McFarlane gets to represent all of Waitara, not just the ones on freehold. The mayor stated that after the Mary Ward issue, he felt like an outcast in meetings with other councils. I can understand where he's coming from, because that is how Waitara people are treated by the New Plymouth District Council. Why would you have holiday home leases and 10 years later, I believe, just turn them over, again at the same price, but will do nothing for Waitara? Is it because we're a poor community? The lease money held in trust will have 3 from the New Plymouth District Council and 3 from iwi. There should be 3 from the leaseholders as well as that, as it is their money, and you only have to look at our 2 council members to see how they are made to toe the line and are given a code of conduct, etc. It all revolves around money. When Waitara Borough Council wanted money for any reason, they borrowed the money and then turned some freehold sections into leasehold to pay for it. This money is held in trust for just that purpose. The New Plymouth District Council has used this money as they wanted. When the Waitara leaseholders took the New Plymouth District Council to court, it was proved that the lease money could only be used for what the trust stated, plus administration costs. Over the last 2 years, the New Plymouth District Council has taken $1 million out of the lease money to pay for legal and valuation costs associated with the sale and purchase agreement with the Crown, which they had no right to take. I think the Serious Fraud Squad would be interested in this. The way the council do the leases, you have no record. If you miss a payment, is they don't give you a running total of your rates or leases. You don't know how much you're in credit or behind. I know of people who have family either paying all or helping leaseholders pay their inflated leases. It seems funny that for the last 100 years, lease renewal prices have been about the same as our rates and is what people budgeted on. But the minute the New Plymouth District Council offers them to the Crown, leases go up 2.5 times as to what it should be, to make them perhaps more attractive to iwi. People are suffering not only financially but health-wise over these leases. Coming out of the bank a couple of months ago, I stopped by a man who told me him and a couple of his mates are coming into the council office with cricket and baseball bats to try to knock some sense into Andrew Judd. Now, this is the feel of the town.
I think really we're getting just a little bit off track, Mrs. Williams. I'd appreciate some of the personal comments, perhaps just...
Well, I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with them, because that is exactly how the emotional fact is in Waitara.
That's fine.
That is how people feel. I have been informed about a lady who slashed her wrist at a council meeting some time back, and some council staff thought it was funny. I personally can't believe this happened, as they laughed at me when I walked out of the Waitara Library after listening to a heap of their half-truths. I was considering applying to be a council member, but have changed my mind as though I'm not heartless, which seems to be advice one should have to be a councillor. You are playing with people's lives and families, and if they're going to lose their homes because of the unjust council, they will come out fighting, as they have nothing to lose. You have taken everything off them. It's not as if you've taken everything off them, and it's when you corner a mouse that will come out fighting. And we in Waitara are like that too. We cannot sit back. The CEO had the cheek to damn well say that she had a mortgage to pay. Well, probably her mortgage would be her travel allowance she gets. That would probably pay it, and then she gets all the rest for nothing. I would also like to know why we get 5, 10 or 15 minutes to speak, and yet Ian Hicks' Office of Treaty Settlements gets 30.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Can I just remind people, or perhaps explain one of the rules we have at council, is that if you've got a phone and it rings during a meeting, we ask for a donation of $50 to your favourite charity. So could you all please put your phones, either switch them off or put them on vibrate? It's all right, you got away before I mentioned it. Thank you, everybody. The next submitter is Mr. Evans. Thank you, Mr. Evans. No, I'm not accepting them at the moment.
Thank you for the opportunity to have something to say about this matter. Mine is more of a historic basis, dating back numerous years, and it encompasses things that have happened in the past as far as the leasehold sections are concerned. In my in my submission, I have answered no to most of the questions, but it's not as if I'm against the freeholding of leasehold sections. It's perhaps the basis of how it's going to be negotiated. It seems that the finance from the sales allocated to the TRC can be utilised for financial projects beyond the Waitara area. I've suggested in my submission that only a certain percentage of the finance, for instance, that goes to the TRC be accumulated, and we don't know what's going to happen as far as the river is concerned. If there's another 100-year flood in 10 years' time, there's going to be emergencies, and so the accumulation of TRC finance, in my opinion, should be only a percentage of it should be spent on the stock banks and whatever to repay their loans and so on, and that the emergency fund should be kept in case of real damage and real serious harm to the town. I've always believed that the leaseholders have had the right to freehold land. And it's happened in the town, it happened in the past, and it happened with individuals, but also with industry. And I think it was a misunderstanding of the leaseholders that they could not freehold. And I don't know why that is, because it was always able to freehold. Freeholding endowment land is in the history of New Zealand, and I've enclosed in my example those examples from Dunedin City, Tauranga, Wakatani and Hamilton, but there's others also in New Zealand that have freehold endowment land.
Although I'm not totally opposed to the transfer of these areas to various, to the Te Atiawa Trust, I could not extract anything involving these areas which or the effects on these areas, which included, for instance, coastal hazard areas, flood zones, public facilities, and residential restrictions or residential development restrictions. But I assumed that these matters would be taken into account when these areas are transferred, or when these areas are proposed to be transferred. There could be, in one or two cases, some quite difficult problems arising in those areas, especially from these possibilities of these various strategies that have been developed in the past. I think there's got to be care into what sort of projects any accumulated finances is given to. I tend to err towards education, health, and perhaps town centre upgrade. But what I would fear is that if there was a reasonable accumulation, and for instance the district council funds, that all of it could go to one project, and it's therefore is not suitable to spread over the whole town. So I think that it's a bit like getting funds from various funding organisations that raise funds from poker machines. They have restrictions on their allocations and what you can apply for, and so I think that this sort of thing should be developed by the council. I took a leasehold section back in almost 40 years ago, and there were two subdivisions in the town. One was the Hume Street extension, and one was the Strawberry Gardens, which is the Willisville Waitara East block. And at that time, the Harbour Trust account was getting a bit depleted, but the council had to raise loans to do the infrastructure. That was pretty good. So 2 loans for $40,000 each were raised with the Housing Corporation, and it was to be the loan interest and principals were to be repaid from the Harbour Trust account. But it was found that the Harbour Trust account was getting a bit sick, and so the council at the time came up with this wonderful idea, well, we'll charge them more rental on the leasehold sections. And so the Waitara East sections, the rental was doubled to offset the loan repayments. That was pretty cool. The loan was for 10 years. The rental paid on those sections was doubled, but it was doubled for the 21 years rather than the 10 years of the loan. So in reality, we have freeholded our section 3 times on the basis that a 5% of government valuation for 20 years offsets the valuation as I've submitted in my submission. And the 1 year is to offset the cost of administration, paper, and so on and so forth. So in actual fact, we have, on the east side of Waitara East, have freeholded our section 3 times. And I don't know whether that can be offset in the cost, and I don't know what the interest rates were at the time, but it accumulated. I did make a calculation at one stage a few years ago. It was $750,000 worth, but however, because there were a lot of sections over there, of course, there was 50 odd sections, and at the time of those sections going up for allocation, we had to have a ballot, and there were up to 5 to 6 applications for each various sections, but we couldn't find a hat, so we had to use a cardboard box. Anyway, okay, so that was one aspect. Now I made a note there that it was assumed that the public would be able to attend the meetings of the board and so on. But I see that's answered in in the preamble to this meeting, so that satisfied my curiosity there. The other thing I've attached with my submission is the or the basis of those sections on at Waitara East and how the loans were raised. But there's also that letter to the leaseholders from the District Council back in 10th March 1994, and it was a pretty generous offer by the council at the time, because it was found that valuation for sections of Waitara was soaring at the time, and this is when the Think Big was in progress. And a lot of, there were leaseholders that took advantage of that offer from the District Council at the time. And whether that creates a difficulty for you people as the council that precedence was set at the time or not, I don't know, but it could be overcome by legislation, of course, but that was something that happened at the back in 1994. My submission is basically a bit of historic stuff which can be taken into account. If you want to read the 2 reams of paper that I've got at home, well, you're quite welcome to it. There's some pretty interesting stuff in it, but you've got enough there to read without me adding to the pile. And thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with it all, because it's going to be a difficult situation, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you, Mr Evans. Do we have any points of clarification from councillors? No. Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Mr Simpson. Good morning. Yes, absolutely. Whichever you're comfortable at.
Thank you. I'd like to begin this morning by reading the submission by Mr Terence Niven, who's given me authority to read it out for you today, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
We were going to do it the other way round, but that's fine. Councillors, we've given Mr Simpson permission to read the submission from Mr Niven, but there will be no questions because he can't speak on behalf of somebody else, and then obviously he'll give his own submission, so that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
106, it's submission 106.
So Mr Simpson will read first, and then he'll let you know when it's finished, and we're starting his own. Thank you.
Mr Niven has asked that I speak on his behalf. I'll read directly from his submission today. In the short summary of the bill, page 6, it states the Regional Council may undertake a public process to spend the money elsewhere in Taranaki if it cannot identify projects within Waitara. What are the current projects in Waitara that the Regional Council has been mandated to do? I do not remember giving them a mandate to do that. The money must remain in Waitara. 2, I want my leasehold property freeholded. I want to own my property in full, never have to pay lease again. The leasehold property I own has extremely poor drainage, and currently my garage gets flooded every time it rains, and still nothing has been done by the New Plymouth District Council to fix this problem. As landlords, they have a duty of care to ensure that we as leaseholders are safe from things such as my garage getting full of water. Where is New Plymouth District Council's duty of care? As to date, New Plymouth District Council has not shown any duty of care. They have never asked me if I had any issues with my property, i.e. flooding. Te Atiawa has offered 16 million for the properties, Pika Pika Block, etc., which was refused by New Plymouth District Council. The Crown offered the New Plymouth District Council 23 million, and that was refused. It was said that these prices were full of bulk buying versus singular purchase price. hence the unimproved valuation leaseholders are now facing. We, the leaseholders, need an opportunity to seek an independent valuer of our own to compare the offer laid out by the New Plymouth District Council valuer. This will give us an opportunity to see where we are at. It is nice that Te Atiawa is getting something, but who gave New Plymouth District Council permission to give this land to Te Atiawa? They certainly did not ask me. Te Atiawa have already settled with the Crown. They have let the leasehold lands go, so let it go, and let the leaseholders have the opportunity to buy these leases. The Waitara leaseholders, people, must be able to make the decisions for Waitara themselves. This can only be done if the leaseholders, Waitara people, are represented on the board. I disagree with the Regional Council that the Regional Council should be able to backdate payments for work already paid for on the Waitara Stop Bank. I believe any money from the Trust should be spent on projects after the bill is passed and not before. I state again that all funds raised through sales of land and lease in Waitara must never be used elsewhere. Number 7, Te Atiawa have lands transferred to them which is provided for. The New Plymouth District Council are able to transfer these lands to Te Atiawa. This provides for the restoration of some lands in the heads of agreement. There are 4 points where Te Atiawa have been provided for, yet if the bill is enacted, the New Plymouth District Council claims it will be in a position to sell a number of other sites in Waitara. I want to know what sites will be sold to Te Atiawa which is not already claimed. I do not approve that these funds raised should cover the New Plymouth District Council costs until after the bill is enacted, and from that date and time onwards, not before or during this, would be unfair to the leaseholders. Clauses 17, 18 and 19 need to be redrafted to make sense. Section 19 must allow leaseholders to seek independent valuer to set off the valuators the New Plymouth District Council used to find the price to pay for a property. Section 18 must be rewritten to support and make it more flexible towards the leaseholder's rights being protected. Section 17 must also be rewritten to reflect the rights and obligations to the leaseholder and the leaseor. Clause 17 and 18 need to be redrafted to make more sense in regards to the rights and obligation of all parties. I agree that all transactions must be in writing to avoid confusion and clarity. That's on page 21, clause 38. And I agree with page 22, clause 8, as to the conflict of interest disclosure. Regards, Terence Niven. Thank you.
So, yes, if we can have a copy of that, perhaps, Mr Simpson, one of the girls will pick it up and we can just have that delivered around. Thank you. So now, councillors, Mr Simpson will give his own submission.
Thank you. Now, I turn to my submission on behalf of myself and my family. And I will also read this too, because it's only fair I do that. The Reserve and Other Land Disposal and Public Bodies Empowerment Act of 1915 conferred certain powers onto the Waitara Harbour Board and validated certain leases issued by the board of that time. These powers were given to the board, which validated leases issued by the board. They were also governed under the provisions of the Waitara Harbour Board Land and Borrowing Act of 1879 and the Harbour Board Act of 1878. Hence the formation of the Waitara Harbour Board, who then seized the land and placed them in fee simple and in trust as an endowment for the Port of Waitara for harbour improvements. Some of these lands are known to us today as the Peka Peka Block. These are also included all parcels of land in the town of Raleigh West, now known as Waitara, the east side of Queen Street to high water mark of the Waitara River, northeast side of New Plymouth Harbour Endowment towards the east side, south of low water mark of the Waitara River, a stream and a swamp to the Nelson Road towards the west and that road again, towards the northwest by Brooks Terrace, towards the west and West Quay and by Queen Street, granted to the board having a frontage title water which was to be deemed to be a wharf within the meaning of the Harbour Boards Act of 1878. This is not a conclusive list. This is the endowment that the bill is wanting to repeal, or at least considering to repeal. Clause 41 of the bill highlights this for our attention. The Waitara Borough Reserves Vesting Act of 1909, the Waitara Harbour Board Act of 1940, Section 36 of the Local Legislation Act 1952, so much of the Schedule 5 of the Taranaki Harbour Boards Empowering Act 1955 as it relates to the Waitara Harbour Board Act 1940, and Section 3 of the Reserves and Other Lands Disposal Act. I'll address the legislative repeal, the bill intends repeal and submission by others, the leaseholders' rights within the bill, if any, the right of freedom, freehold and leasehold properties, finally summarising our own views as Māori, as islanders, as leaseholders, and a member of this community we know as Waitara. The bill itself has come at a time where all leaseholders, the iwi and the community of Waitara are finally coming to terms that the lands that are in the hands of New Plymouth District Council are now being returned to the rightful owners in one form or another. Although only receiving no more than 1 or 2% of their rightful lands, the iwi have come to settle their long-term grievance in one form or another, and we should be proud of their decisions. The leaseholders have now been provided with the opportunity to purchase their leasehold property and become freeholders through the current process. Both these two matters have come about through continued pressure on the Crown and local government. The Waitara people and the iwi have spoken and at last been heard. It is our view that once the bill is enacted or even prior, we must consider that the endowment itself will no longer be in existence. The bill in its current form has and is wanting to continue the endowment, but under a different and disguised name. This, in our view, can only be seen as a rouge. However, it has not allowed the unencumbered freehold of these properties. All it is doing is changing the status and the name of the land. It is still holding leaseholders to ransom. The old saying that once a job is complete, funds must cease does not apply in this instance. If Parliament allows these enactments to be repealed, it is our view that the land in question should become freehold lands immediately without any encumbrances. We should never be subject to any further validated form of legislative pressure or policy demands that are currently being inflicted on us on both the iwi and the leaseholders by the New Plymouth District Council and the Taranaki Regional Council. Because all we are doing is agreeing to a further injustice of the past. We are agreeing to both Taranaki Regional Council and the New Plymouth District Council to continue down the road of using leasehold properties to fund other areas of Waitara under the sham of selling leasehold properties to leaseholders at the unimproved value. Once the legal repeal of prior acts have been agreed, the bill must allow leaseholders to purchase their properties with no flies attached. At the present moment, we have the carrot in front of the donkey, but the donkey is unable to eat it. The donkey has been allowed to smell the carrot, but it's not allowed to touch it. So what's our point? The New Plymouth District Council and prior council have used leaseholders' funds to improve Waitara, the Waitara River and the bridge, as well as that the leaseholders were still expected to pay the same rates as all other Waitara people, therefore paying towards the river, the harbour, the bridge, as well as normal rates due by all people in the New Plymouth District Council area of control. Therefore, I agree with the sentiments of all others that the bill in its current form requires certainty, clearness and transparency in respects to the iwi, more importantly to the leaseholders. Neither the Taranaki Regional Council nor New Plymouth District Council should profit from the lands that were stolen in the first instance and used in a way to prop up a town at their discretion. Taranaki Regional Council nor the New Plymouth District Council should directly benefit in any form, shape or way. It is our view that the Taranaki Regional Council and New Plymouth District Council must cease the continuation and justification of their current behaviour and continue to use these funds at their own discretion from confiscated lands. These decisions must surely be at the behest of the iwi and the leaseholders. The bill must allow both the iwi to settle in the manner they so desire, the leaseholders the freedom to now purchase their properties without the added burden that the New Plymouth District Council is going to place upon them. The bill in its current form gives no legal protection to the leaseholders. Section 19 of the bill is an example of such non-protection. This section is in need of clarity and rewritten to allow leaseholders alternative options. To only have one methodology of valuation to determine the lease is not acceptable. This bill in its current form is more onerous towards the leaseholders than the past enactment that the bill is claiming to repeal. The onus has been placed solely on the leaseholders to fund all transactions individually rather than spreading the cost through existing funds. The bill itself is filled with uncertainty, as my submission has only briefly highlighted. Section 17 and 18 are only the tip of the iceberg. We're saying let Waitara bill be enacted, but it must be to the betterment of the iwi, the leaseholders, to freehold, the town, its people, but not to the servants that are there to serve us. The long-running dispute of the leasehold land needs to cease. But it needs to cease with all parties agreeing to something they can live with. We have seen the long trail of litigation between various councils that have held these lands in perpetuity. The servants forgetting that they are dealing with people, humans, flesh and blood, that live and have fought to have these lands, either to have them returned or made into freehold properties. A lot of these people are now either old or have passed on. We have a new generation that is required to take up the banner to freehold these lands. To the public servants that advise the council, this is part that you have forgotten in the bill. Yes, you have a job to do, and that job is to protect all the citizens of New Plymouth, and we respect that. And the way you do this is through legislation. However, the bill needs to reflect the role of the leaseholders in this community and the sacrifice they have made to ensure that the Waitara Harbour Board, the river and bridge are funded and maintained. The leaseholders have played an important and crucial role towards maintenance of the Waitara on behalf of the Waitara people. The bill needs to show this gratitude. Now that you've heard a brief from me, it's clear that the proposed package needs a legislative alteration so the leaseholders' voice can be heard. The leaseholders have been fighting for years to have the land freeholder, but never at a price and the methodology used by the New Plymouth District Council. It is likened to a thief making hay while the sun shines. The iwi have been waiting for the lands to be returned unencumbered and have had to pay the ultimate price of compromising away their lands to others, and the others I'm talking about are the leaseholders. Finally, I'd like to complete this by saying that my mother and father were leaseholders for years, and we remember Charlie Bingley, Roy Bunyan Sr., Harry Gosnell, Laurie Healy. They met regularly on a monthly basis to try and get their land freeholded way back when we first moved to Waitara. That didn't happen. It's never happened, and they've gone. We do not want to see our generation pass away, the same as my parents and those around us who tried really hard to freehold their properties and to be well successful, to die knowing today we've got an opportunity, but it must be done in a fair, respectful and courteous way. It must never be done where currently the way that the bill is being presented to us today. On behalf of my family, thank you. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr Simpson. You happy to take any questions or clarification?
Yes.
Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? I think you covered the ground very well. Thank you very much. Submitters number 13, Kerry Rowe and Raywin Lendoff. Welcome to you both, thank you.
If you want, do you want to stay?
You can, one can present from where and just wherever you're comfortable.
I'd just like to say
Get you
that,
take that with you. It'll pick up and go.
just like to say that
I'm here today on behalf of Rowan to support her. He's a partner, and she doesn't really want to sit here today. She's pretty wound up about it. She's been wound up about it for a while. One of the things, I haven't got a leasehold property. I don't own a leasehold property. I'm from a farming background, and I've been around lease farms and over the years, and I was always told don't ever buy anything to do with lease by my father. Now, in Rowan's case, the leasehold or the valuations that the council have come up with, in my opinion, they've only got the one valuation from the one offering. And that was probably the biggest mistake. They should have had more than just one valuation company putting forward a price. What I find really hard to understand is that people who normally plan their life, they take a mortgage on, they have a structure to pay something off, and that's how it is. But what I don't understand is what at the moment, because of the valuations and how it's been structured as an open market quest, if you want to call it that, the people are at the end of their cycle. So they haven't got the option of going and getting an extra job. They haven't got all these other options. They're actually at the very end of the cycle, which is they are near retirement, they have got X amount of savings, and on paper, a lot of them aren't going to be able to service these loans. Now, from my point of view, looking at what's going to happen, what I would immediately worry about is how long is it going to take to settle this? Is it going to take 2 years, 1 year, 3 years? The people that are paying $48,000 to $5,000 a year on top of their rates, which happen to be like 2,200 odd, are they going to, what? Are they going to do it for 3, 4, 5 years? And then at the end of it, once this valuation's done, are they going to whack that onto it as well? So the reality is, in Rowan's case, her section probably 6 months ago was under 12 inches of water. The whole section was. Everything floated. The water from the central school drains completely across the road into her property. There's no curbing on that side of the road. Now, most people who have a section, their water has to run off their section to the drainage point, which is normally the road. In town, you've got your guttering, the water comes off your section to that guttering. Well, in Waitara, it comes from the central school, it comes from the neighbour's place, because the neighbours raised their section. This section here has been raised 12 inches. Probably no one knows that. It's been raised 12 inches. This section's been raised. The section over here has been raised, and Rowan's section is right behind this. So her section's the lowest section in this whole area. Not only is it the lowest section, it's the only section that is a leasehold section in this whole line, right through here. Now, in Rowan's case, yeah, I'll help her if she's given the option of freeholding it. I'll give her a hand to pay it, get through it. But I was talking to a couple yesterday at a 50th, and I know them really well, and they're both retired, and they are just shit worried. These people are just shit worried. They've had 2 years of 2 years of 4,500 lease payments. They're paying their rates. They can't pay it. They cannot pay the money. So what's going to happen is you've got to get your valuation right. Your valuation's got to be fair. As we all know, over the years, people look at leased property, and the reflection is that it's a low price. I can make some money on it, and it being a farm, but things change. And what I'm saying is, just because the market value today says it's worth X amount of dollars, doesn't completely reflect on what that property is worth. So I would be worried about the interest rate. I would be worried about the settlement date. I would be worried that the council will take the money off the people that are going to settle their sections. So the people that are going to buy their sections, they're going to take that money, and then what they're going to do is look at what's left, and if it's a small portion left, they're going to say, rightio, we're going to offer this. What they've said is they could sell the opportunity, right? So the opportunity is it goes to common marketplace, which is probably common lease. I mean, if I was a person buying it, I would want common lease. I've got a friend who's got an industrial building down here. I talked to him yesterday. He's had two rises. He's coming up for a renewal next year. His rates are 3,200. He's paying 5,000, just over 5,000 at the moment. So he's got 8,000. He's paying 8,200, and his section's valued at $112,000. He paid 275 grand for it. So on paper, he's had it 12 years, and it's worth what? Is it worth 400,000? Yeah, I just feel the valuations aren't reflective of the time that some of those people have been on those properties for a long time, and I don't really see how some of those people, if they're wanting to make money out of the properties and have bought the property in the last 2 years or 1 year or 5 years, but there should be some sort of tier system that helps the people that have had their properties for 30 years. Like Raywin, she could have bought her property for what? $8,500. $8,500. Quite happy to buy it. Quite happy to buy that property. Always wanted the property. Beautiful garden, big trees, well looked after. Can't buy it. Not allowed to buy it. And now, in Raven's situation, you know, realistically, she's closed her business, right? She's got no income. All right, I can help. But hey, I've got, you know, we've both got commitments. So now she's in a situation where that's the situation you've got. So all I'm saying is the valuations, I think, my own personal view is the valuations aren't correct. And this man right over the far corner there, who's a valuer, trained valuer, he told me that Armstrong Ave sections are worth, what, how much are they? 150,000? 120?
He's not allowed to answer you, I'm sorry.
Anyway, the guy that owns that site is actually a good friend of mine. He's the guy that develops it. And I can tell you now that there's 12 inches of black soil and then there's clay. And anyone who's off a farm or knows anything about farming will know that it is not silt ground. So there's a completely different scenario. I mean, I'm not against the Maori side of it. Most people generally want to own their section. That's the underlying feeling. And I think, you know, like the stone wall, for instance, should we pay for it? Should we pay for it? We're only 10% of the Waitara population. Should Rowan pay for it? Why should we be paying for a Nairo? Why should we be paying for the Uranui Bank embankment? Why should we be, hey, we're a ratepayer, we all pay for it. So what makes the stone wall at Waitara any different? Is 10% of the population of Waitara going to pay for it? Is that fair? I don't think so. You want to say anything?
Well, so I bought my house 30 years ago, and at the time there was very little difference in the value of a lease and a freehold section. So I paid sort of top dollar for it then. I mean, if you buy a leasehold section today, there's a big difference in the valuation. So I paid, you know, good money for it 30 years ago. And it's so I don't see why we should have to pay so much money to freeholder. I don't think the sections really are worth, I think, between 40 and 50,000. I think that would be a fair price for the sections, because I've paid my mortgages off, and I thought, right, you know, before you retire, I didn't expect to end up having 3.5 times the mortgage that I've ever had at the end of my life when, you know, I'll never pay it off. It's crazy, and there's older people out there than I am that, I mean, it's going to make them sick worrying about it. It is a worry. It's a big, big worry.
The other thing that is very serious is the time frame. The time frame is really important, because these people, even if these old people decide to buy these properties, the time frame will kill them. The interest rate's going to kill them. The time frame's going to kill them. I mean, everyone knows we can all sit here and drink milk all day, and it's going to be cheaper than water, bottled water. And at the moment, the oil price is done and dusted, so things aren't going to stay like that, you know. And time is going to kill these people. These people are going to commit to something, and they're going to get killed for it, because it's going to really hurt.
Thank you both.
Thanks very much for your time.
Just before you go, are there any points of clarification, councillors, that you'd like to ask? No, if not, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Rowe, in your submission, you said you made the point about selling leases to a third party, to another party. Do you want to elaborate on your concerns there?
Well, at the moment you have got a valuation done on. At the moment you've got a valuation done on market rates, right? Mm-hmm. In my opinion, they haven't taken a lot of things into account. So therefore, if you are going to sell these leases, you are going to sell them as a open market enterprise. You're trying to attract people, a business-minded person, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So that's how they're going to relate to it. They are going to want 8 or 9% return, period, right? And they're going to get it because you're going to sell it to them, and when you sell it to them, you're going to want them to buy it, and you're going to make it attractive for them to buy it, because in your legal paperwork that's probably been written up by some very clever people, they know this, and they've made sure that there's clauses in there that will allow it to be sold correctly. So those parties are going to be commercial operators, and they are going to charge. End of story. Does that answer it?
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not against it. I'm not against it, but I just don't see how it's going to be working. How it's going to work. And like I said to you, the time restraint, the old person commits to a loan, or in that case, the old person can't commit to the loan. They're in a small minority. The council say, oh, look, it's taking a lot to administer it. We really want to clear it. We'll on-sell it. You know, that's the scenario, yeah.
Thank you both very much. Councillors, next submitter is Lee Langle. Good morning. If you'd just like to bring that mic in front of you, I know they're awkward things. It'll lift up to you. That's it. Thank you.
Hopefully. Can you hear me all right?
Just turn it this way. Just.
Hopefully it's... I'm a Waitara leaseholder, number 9 Newbury Place. We purchased our property in Easter 2000, having sold a freehold home. We purchased Newbury Place leasehold with the understanding that we would be able to freehold. It all fell apart a few years later.
Excuse me, just one moment. Peter, can you just turn that mic for me to, it's this, you're being my technical man at the moment, just turn this into, it's got, thank you.
Oh,
You've got a quiet voice, we just need to bring it a bit closer. Thanks, Peter.
We're on a new lease now, and we went from $442 per year. We are now $4,700. It's a huge amount of money to pay every week out of a pension. Roughly equates to $95 a week. Very upset about it, and yes, there are a lot of people that are angry. I am one of those people. That's our home. That's our security. That's what we worked for. And I can now see things at our age spiralling downhill, and it's not a nice place to be in. We've both worked hard. My husband John retired at 69, good provider, wonderful children, wonderful grandchildren. I have to speak from the heart because this is affecting our family, especially myself. We have always been able to pay our bills, sometimes when we were younger a little bit late, but they got paid. We cannot pay $95 a week. It has not been paid. We are still paying our old lease. That we can afford. When we first moved into 9 Newbury Place, the land value was, and I have this from CoreLogic, these figures are literally all over the place. Between 1999 and 2001, the land value was $9,500. In 2004, it went up to $33,000. In 2007, it went up to $93,000. That's why our lease went sky high. In 2010, $93,000. 2013, $97,000. But the stupid part, the capital value of the house, $245,000. In 2010, $235,000. This absolutely astonishes me. In 2007, the capital value on our home was $260,000. Where do these figures come from? Where do they come from? Do they pluck them out of the air? What happened in that shorter time span of 3 years that the property can go up $60,000? The land's not worth it. I have had twice the council come out and inspect our back section. The last time it flooded out the garage and the basement. We have water coming down from Waitara East School through our neighbour's section into our section, and then it can't escape. So we had to go out and cut a hole in the fence so that water could be let out to run through our neighbour's section further down onto High Street. That's what we put up with in the winter. The back section is not even livable. It is underwater. When council came out again, and I said to them, how much longer do we have to put up with this for? We have a piece of land down the back that we can't use. Unfortunately, it's the stormwater drains. They need to be repaired. What I would really appreciate that if they could be repaired, so that a massive amount of money that we are having to pay on lease, at least we're getting something back for our money. My last thing. Our son purchased a home, a leasehold home, and moved into it last Friday. He's lucky. He's on an old lease that has got quite a long time to go. So by the time this is all over and done with, hopefully he should be set. But I got a call from our bank. I got a call from the TSB bank to say that because we had to guarantor Harley for a very small amount of money, we had to sign our lease. And I said, pardon? We don't own the land. We own the house, we don't own the land. Why would we have to sign a lease? I don't agree with what council's doing to us. If the lease was not signed, the bank would not let the money go. A week later, I got another call from the TSB bank. Mrs. Langle, you have a credit facility with us. I said, yes, we do. We notice that you don't use it. No, we don't, but it's there if we have an emergency. That line of credit will be closed off if you do not sign your lease. And I said, well, you're a bit late. I said, because it's already going through the processes now to help get our son into his first home. So whichever way you people go, please understand these are our homes. We have put up with enough. Yes, we're angry. At our stage of life, we shouldn't have this. We should not have to be told to get a mortgage. The land is overvalued anyway. If you live in Waitara, anyone will tell you that. And thank goodness for Wayne Beggs, because all of his points were valid. He knows exactly what's going on out here. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for the opportunity of being able to speak.
Thank you. Were you happy to take a couple of questions of clarification?
Yes.
Councillor Pearce?
Yes, thank you. After listening to Mr. Begg, excuse me, haven't talked for a while this morning. If you think the house is valued at $267,000 and you freeholded the land for $100,000 in round figures, do you think you'd get $360,000 if you sold it?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Definitely not. And I can say that in all honesty. I have family. This site property is leasehold. The one right next door to her is freehold. Brand new home. Absolutely beautiful. Right on the waterfront. They would be lucky to get $260 for theirs.
But you couldn't get $360.
Absolutely no way. I would love to, because I'd take the money and run. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry, that one. Some surprising comments in there. Thank you for that. Certainly lots to think about. Miss Vicky Dombrowski, please. Good morning. Thank you very much. Hello.
Sorry, wasn't ready. There was someone else then, wasn't there? But obviously not speaking.
Take your
today.
time. Take your time.
Firstly, I'd just like to greet the councillors, council officers, members of Waitara, residents of Waitara, and people here today interested in this process. I'm going to speak to the written submission, which was from Waitara Live Board, not just myself, and it was endorsed by the Waitara Live Board. However, today as a verbal, there's also new information, so when I speak to the new information, it's probably going to be my own opinion rather than my board. So I think that probably just needed to be clarified. And I will only read parts of my submission because some of that has also been rectified through the current agenda that sits in front of you. First and foremost, Waitara Live would like to acknowledge the large amount of work that has taken place to reach this point in time, and that the compromises that the partner organisations have had to make, Te Āti Awa in particular. We understand and commend the aspirational approach taken by the three organisations to bring this matter to an acceptable conclusion, whilst at the same time providing hope to residents wishing to freehold their properties, and indeed for the wider community to have a discretionary income available for future cultural, economic, social and environmental projects outside local government general rates. However, we also have a few concerns about the current iteration of the proposed land bill, and these are outlined. 1. Taranaki Regional Council expenditure or its portion of the fund in Waitara. The ability of the community to propose projects to the TRC and monitor the spending of the fund by the TRC. We have real concerns from the wider Waitara community and the Waitara Live Board that Taranaki Regional Council portion of the current and incoming funds may be used in Waitara but may be used outside of Waitara following a public process. The Regional Council determines that it cannot reasonably use the funds on any projects within its mandate in Waitara. They're going to go wider. The Regional Council will also have ability to recover costs from its 2012-2015 flood protection scheme, as it represents the Regional Council's most significant investment in Waitara in recent years. That's their statements from the statement of intent that we're writing the submission to. One of the questions we posed was, how does TRC know which projects the community would like to propose? And it kind of doesn't, because there's been no forum for the Regional Council to talk to Waitara people about that. So will the council consult with the community before it releases its long-term or annual plans and show that there are no, well, where it can and can't spend money in Waitara? So we disagree also with the TRC recovering costs from the flood protection scheme, as all our ratepayers are already charged a targeted rate for this work. And the TRC funding impact statement on page 105, it states the council does not require lump sum contribution for any of its targeted rates. We think that the TRC portion of the current and incoming funds from the new proposal need to be administered as transparently as the proposed MPDC and Te Ātiawa Independent Board, or at the very least kept in perpetuity for projects that are likely to come up in the future. And given the recent poor state of our natural resources and the potential for Waitara to meet a proposed aspirational status and theme of eco-town. We would like both councils to be equally open and transparent about the amount of incoming funds from the proceeds of leasehold sales and rents, both current and accumulated funds and potential funds, should the bill become law, and would like to know exactly which costs both councils intend to recover from the legislative process. Ideally, TRC could have a representative seat on the proposed board or the incoming board, and could co-opt a representative to ensure that accumulated funds and proceeds from the TRC share of sales are only to be spent in the Waitara area. This way, any environmental projects, regional gardens or transport projects, especially river and coastal projects that fall within the TRC mandate, can be proposed to the board and could be passed on to the TRC for consideration in partnership with the applying group's application. And read the leaseholder views. We've noted that there is some fear around this provision. The freeholding to someone else seemed to be the biggest issue, but clearly today there's also the pricing and the valuation issue is very concerning, obviously, to a lot of the speakers that have presented this morning. But we also note the fear around the provision of being able to sell that lease to someone else. With regards to the independent statutory board, Waitara Live are in support of the statutory board. However, for it to remain truly independent and to enhance the social, environmental and cultural outcomes for Waitara, we think it absolutely necessary that at least one person appointed from each entity must be a current resident in Waitara. And given that there's also an area specified in the bill that area, so the person should be living or residing from that area as well. There were a couple of typos that I've picked up in the bill that I've talked about, but that's not relevant today. Beg your pardon, excuse me. Page 12 also mentioned that council will be in a position after the bill is enacted to sell a number of other sites in the Waitara to any interested party. Waitara Live would like to know A, which sites these are, and B, if costs associated with selling these sites also intend to be recovered via the income from the endowment funds. There was another question that hasn't been answered, hasn't appeared to be answered in this current agenda that sits in front of us. Does the proposed definition of Waitara as shown in Schedule 1 apply to TRC as well as MPDC? It's not clear. Can Council please explain who will be managing and monitoring project contracts with proposing organisations given under Section 24? 4D, the board may not enter into contracts. Will Council staff be responsible for contract management and monitoring? And if so, will those costs also be recovered from the endowment funds? Waitara Live believes that this consultation process is the wrong forum for discussion and submission of ideas for the use of potential income from proceeds of sales. It feels like jumping the gun or putting the horse before the cart. That's all that I have from the written submission, but given that there's new information in this agenda as well, I'd like to address some of those, if I could please. And this is where it becomes my personal opinion and not that of Waitara Live board. So I query part 2 on page 2 with the future costs of council cannot be met from last year's income and cannot reasonably be recovered from future income, can be met from the fund if necessary. I have no idea what that means. That's just very confusing. And so most of these things I agree with on those recommendations. Excuse me. I also, on page 9, and it's something that I've picked up here, and on page 9 of the agenda, there are some recommendations from officers setting a time limit for leaseholders so that they can organise finance and undertake due diligence. I think that there is a precedent being set with this similar arrangement to freehold with the Junction Road leases, using the unimproved land value with a 2-year time period. I think that a 2-year time period would be a minimum, actually, to allow people to get all their ducks in a row and make sure that they can get the finance to freehold, or at least put members of their family in a position to do that for them. Trying to recover costs from historic work is something that I don't agree with, and it's certainly there are no TRC representatives here today either, so they've been conspicuous by their absence right through this whole process. Te Aotearoa can send its chair here, the council can have the majority of its councillors here. I think it's just rude. Sorry. We could have councillors here. That would be really nice to have TRC councillors here, even if they were just here to listen to some of the comments. On page 16 of the agenda, there is a list of projects that potentially would be in scope for receiving funding from the proceeds of the endowment, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them that really are should be rate-based rather than projects of full and scope, I believe. For instance, improvements to CBD, that's a rating thing. Making better walkways, I think that's rates. Beautifying beachfronts, rates. Beautifying the town, rates. Making swimming pool indoors or new swimming pool, that's rates as well. Improvements to library, rates. Riverside improvements, TRC rates. Playgrounds and play equipment, rates. Developing parks and reserves, that's rates. Accessibility, access improvements, that's rates. I mean, we pay rates as well, so, and under that one bucket system, I think we deserve to have some of those things being paid for out of our rating, out of our rates rather than out of funds or proceeds coming from leaseholders. So clearly, I think, to conclude, that I think the valuation process probably does need to have another a wee look at it. And if I look at my own property, I've owned a leasehold property. I've also owned at the moment a freehold property. If I tried to sell it today, I still probably wouldn't get what it's worth if it was sitting in Fitzroy or Bell Block or somewhere like that. Although, you know, I wouldn't give it up for the world because this is an awesome place to live and it's so beautiful. And it's really cool that, you know, you can lie in bed at night and the waves send you to sleep. But I'm picking that there's a lot of leaseholders that aren't having a lot of good sleep at the moment. So, yeah, I think it would be good if you can consider some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms Dombrowski, when you noted that list of things that the money may well be spent in Waitara, were you aware that those were views by the submitters, not suggestions by council?
Yes.
Okay. Further points of clarification? All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our final submitter for this section is Reuben Porter. Morning, Mr Porter.
Good morning. Kia ora, Joe. It's the first time I've been in this sort of situation, and I don't know.
I bet we all look frightening from there as well.
Yeah.
Just
like,
from the heart's fine.
We've all been there.
Yeah. But the lady before, Vicky, just about stole all my thunder, so... but apart from that, I'm just here to support all the leaseholders from Waitara. I know Craig and Howie down here. Kia ora, Howie. Yeah, and I'm torn between two. With where I live is where the second lady was talking, up in Newberry Place, and yeah, we can't afford it, but we're living all right. And a lot of us are like that. And we know you've got a job to do. You know, I'm not here to beg you or anything. You got a job to do. But, and you've got the lawyers. You got lawyers 24/7. They can find ways to work things out or find a loophole or something. I don't know. I'm just a worker, just an ordinary person. And yeah, and on my other side is my wife. She's got land that's hers, and they're trying to get it back. And I went to a meeting last week or a week or so, to Kotaitanga or Te Aotearoa, and she's part of that, trying to get their land back. And it's I just can't see how it's going to work because when they take it to arbitration or whatever, this land court or whatever they do, they got to give their land back. How does that work out? I can't understand. I don't understand it. You're trying to tell me I can buy this land, but it's not even yours. you know, where we're living. So if I buy this land, the next minute I get a knock on the door, hey, that's our land. What do? I know my wife's hapu is Manakorihi, and they said they'll fight till they go down in the ground for their land back. So, well, to me, when they take it, they'll probably take it down to Parliament. I don't know. I'm not smart, okay? Howie might be able to enlighten you on this. Tūroro Flavel, he's a Minister for Land Affairs. And if they take it to him, he might, whatever they do, stop it. But, yeah, I just find myself in a rock and a hard place. But I know you've got to do what you got to do. And I know my neighbours want their freehold, their land too, and I don't want to begrudge them that. Sure, that's their right. Man, they've been hanging out for ages, trying to get their land freehold. Now they get a freehold, hello, got to pay 100 grand for it. Where does that come from? And then they say, oh, you got these people that go around saying, oh, this is how much your land's worth. Yeah, but show me the money. All they can say is, that's how much it's worth. That's all it is. I never knew, I'm not smart on they say the market will figure it out for you. Well, the market's the people who want to buy it, so that's the understanding I know. And a commodity, that's what I got, is a commodity, is a house. They want to buy my house. What for? At 100 grand? Like that lady said, my house is not worth 100 grand. So, yeah, I'm a bit lost at the moment. Just a bit down, but whatever you decide, that's what's going to happen. And, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I just thought I'd put a face to the submission anyway, whether it's here and there or there, everywhere, I don't know. But I'm at a loss anyway. But I've got nothing more to say, so thanks very much for your time.
Kia ora. Mr Porter, we appreciate you putting a face to those words, because that's what impacts on us, to have you here and know that you've taken the time and courage. Would you just let one or two of us ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Councillor McFarlane.
Hey, you mentioned your submission, and reading through them, I thought your submission was probably a very logical one. Particularly the last part there where you mentioned $1,000 for every year off of home ownership. And given that seems to be a bit of a theme that's come through from a lot of the submitters, given, just say Newbury Place, Airedale Place, High Street there, if the land value was 90,000 and you've been there for say 40 years, would a $50,000 to $60,000 land value make it affordable to you?
Oh, you have to ask my wife that. I haven't got the smart seat, so. Yeah, probably would too. Yes, yeah, probably would too. Yeah. Sweet.
Supplementary to that, Madam Chair.
Councillor Donovan.
Mr Porter, kia ora. I picked up on that point too. I thought it was a very interesting approach. Have you tried that discussion with other leaseholders, and what do they think of the idea?
I went to a couple here because they used to have a couple of leasehold meetings down at the War Memorial here, and no, I didn't sort of get engaged with them, but just listening to them because they're more smarter than me. You know, I'm not savvy in this sort of thing. Yeah, I'm more or less down there, working from the ground level.
But do other leaseholders like this idea as well?
Probably do, no doubt. Yep. No doubt they do. Yeah. Cheers.
Mr Porter, how long have you lived in your house?
Oh, about 30, 40 odd years, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
Sweet.
Councillor Pearce, last
Just
question.
One from me, please. We heard Mr Beck say that there was a $57,000 difference between freehold and leasehold land.
What does that mean?
How do you feel about that?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
That if I was going to buy your section, that would be about the value of it.
Oh, okay.
57,000?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet.
All right, thank you. Oh, sorry, I did say last one, but I'll just allow one more if you don't mind. But just remember that to level of questions, please.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd just like to state that I really enjoyed your submission, and you say you're not savvy, but you've come up with one of the best solutions.
Oh, no.
You know, I've only one I've heard this morning, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Thank
Kia
you.
ora tātou.
All right. Look, I'd like to thank everybody for sitting with us through this morning's session. It really, it does make a difference to see some faces to those comments that we read. And I do assure you that we actually do read them. As I said to one of the ladies before, I took a day off work to read submissions. But it really is important to see you. So thank you all very much for coming. We're going to break for lunch now, and hopefully some of you will come back and see us when we resume at 1 o'clock. So thank you all very much. Declare this part of the meeting adjourned.